welcome to episode 39. We've been absent over the summer. We've been doing plenty of shows, and I thought now it's starting to ease up, we'd start to do some videos. One of the most popular videos that we did was on some Chinese condensers, when people were asking what they sounded like, deciding that they were actually pretty good, and some people actually quite liked them and went and bought some. The SM57 is a different issue altogether. The copies that have been around for quite a while seem to go from pretty good to absolutely dreadful in terms of quality. And some of them, apart from the colour, bear very little resemblance. I mean, really tacky things. So I went out of my way to find the most cheap one I could. And I found one that was £12. Now, this microphone here is the one that I bought in about 1974. It's my first proper microphone, and I think it cost me about £22 in the 70s. And bearing in mind, that was around about a week's wages for me, I think, at the time. So this was a pretty expensive microphone for a sort of starter to actually consider buying. But I've still got it, and it still works fine. I've got loads of other 57s, of course, that I've bought over the years, but I find it really difficult to tell the difference. So with a £12 mic on order, it arrived. Initial opinion was a bit mixed, to be honest. When it arrived, the box looks okay. You know, it says Shure 57. It looks sort of vaguely right. I'm not sure how Shure are doing their numbering anymore, but the label on this is SM57 LC. Now, when I bought that original Shure, it was also an LC version, and back then the LC meant it came with a cable, a 20-foot, very thick, very stiff, very heavy duty switchcraft connected cable. This, of course, doesn't come with a cable. I'm not sure if Shure has stuck to this idea that LC means cable. I don't know. But it's certainly, I didn't really expect it to say LC. I just thought it would say SM57, like most of my other ones did. It's a bit tatty. Now, the glue that they used to tape the sleeves together managed to get on the box. So when I tried to slide it out, it was all stuck. And in the end, I had to peel it off. What was inside was pretty typical of the sort of thing you expect to get. The Shure mic clip, well, it looks like a Shure mic clip, but it's much more plasticky. It's not as rigid as the Shure. It certainly looks like one, but it's not going to convince anybody it's a genuine one. Rather nice, Shure labelled bit of Velcro. That would come in handy, wouldn't it? I can tape a few cables with that. The usual bag. It's labelled Shure, but it's very plasticky. It doesn't feel remotely like the Shure ones. There's some bits and pieces. A user guide. It's not bad printing quality, I suppose. And then we come to the microphone, and that's when the first obvious thing. It's light. It isn't the same weight as the Shure microphones. If I compare it with my original, if I pick the two things up here, this one, I put it on the scales, it comes in at 265 grams. A current SM57 that I weighed this morning, bought 2 years ago, so it's 2020 vintage Shure, was 275 grams. So 265, 275 in 40 years, blimey. More than 40 years. So it hasn't changed very much. And I guess small differences in things like transformers, internal components, the actual type of metal, that can make that sort of difference. But 10 grams over 40 years, I think, is a pretty consistent sort of amount for a microphone. Now, this one tips the scales at 165 grams, so it's seriously light. when you hold them together, the printing on these is similar, but it's not the same. The copy has got quite inferior printing. It's slightly different sizes. The font is slightly different. But there are a few other differences. The first one is look at the colour of the grills. Now, fair enough. The silver one could just be brand new mesh, and the dark mesh on mine could be 40 years worth of grime and corrosion and whatever. But there's a sizable difference there in the brightness, and I think it's a very different metal. The other thing that's different is that if you look into the Shure, underneath the plastic end cap, there is a perforated grill. Now, on all genuine 57s that I've come across, that perforated grill has a gap in it. It's wrapped around the capsule and it doesn't quite meet, and it's about 2mm, but it's a distinct gap. In the copy, there's no gap. And also, you can't see through it as well, so the actual perforations in that little metal foil shield are smaller. So there is a difference there. Other than that, they're exactly the same size and they're exactly the same diameter. Can't see any differences there at all. There is definitely a feel difference. The chunkier one, with your eyes closed, you'd recognise as a Shure. The lighter one, you'd have no trouble spotting if you pulled it out of a microphone box. As soon as you compare it to others, it's different. So the question now, of course, is what does it sound like? Now, there's a problem here, because people tend to assume that the reference mic that we're using, this SM7B, despite the fact that I like to use them further away, and I'm not remotely a put it in your face and sort of have it hiding half your face person. I quite like the tone of it used further away. Now, a lot of people will constantly bang on about the capsule and an SM57 being very similar, and you can swap an SM7B for a 57 and it will sound very similar. Well, the truth is they don't. The SM57 is designed for someone to bellow into. A few people love to use them as vocal mics, and even though they pop and they bang, they like that sort of gritty quality. And so you see SM57s stuck in front of someone's face and they'll use them there. If you replace the SM7B with a 57 at the same distance, it sounds completely different. We're now going to do the comparison between the microphones. So you're hearing me now on the SM7B, which at the moment is mounted my usual foot or so away from my mouth. You certainly can't see it in this shot. And the distance here is exactly the same as the distance between the fake SM57 and me. So let's switch. Okay, now you're now listening to me on the fake SM57. It's not very impressive, is it? It's quite a big jump between the SM7B. We'll go back. SM7B. So this is the SM7B, and we're now going to switch back to the SM57 copy. That's not very good, is it, really? So now I'm talking to you on the SM7B. Now, fair enough, these are not designed to be used at huge distances, but the President of America has two of these on a podium. He certainly doesn't have the counterfeit versions. So with a little bit of careful EQ, you can do things with it. But as a direct comparison, the SM57 at a distance is not a powerful mic. I didn't expect it to be quite as feeble as this. So what we'll do is we'll do a swap now and compare this to the genuine SM57. Okay, so now we're on the genuine SM57 at the same distance. So we can still do the swap if you want to. So let's go back to the SM7B. SM7B now. So you're hearing me on the SM7B. We'll switch back to the genuine SM57, which is what you're now listening to. So it's still a slightly thinner sound than we had from the SM7B, isn't it? But that's because the SM7B is quite a clever mic, and as you bring it in, its tonal qualities remain pretty constant right up to your lip. So now we're on the SM7B as our reference mic, and we'll switch across to the genuine SM57. So you're now hearing me on the SM57, the genuine Shure SM57, the same one the President of the United States stands in front of at his podium. So distance-wise to my mouth, we're only over a foot by a little bit, probably 13 inches, 14 inches maybe at the tops. But the SM57 genuine versus the SM57 fake, there is a difference. And of course there is always going to be a difference between that and the SM7B. But bear in mind, this is with no EQ whatsoever. This is exactly what's coming out of the microphone being recorded. What happens if we bring in the proximity effect that these things are used for? Hold on. So now I've got the SM57, and this SM57 being the genuine one is quite happy this sort of distance from my mouth. The snag, of course, is the P's and the B's and the sibilance that you get from having a microphone with no windshield, no basket, nothing to deaden that air. So used in close, you do get that slightly raspy sound, and the P's and B's can definitely be a problem. Now, it doesn't stop people singing into them, but I'm not sure that this particular sound is that attractive. But anyway, people do it. So anyway, we've got the SM57, the genuine one, just a little bit from my mouth. Let's swap it for the fake one. We're now on the fake 57, close to my mouth. Again, it's not a particularly nice sound, I don't think, in my mind. Certainly it wouldn't be sort of on my list to do this often. Maybe we can help with a windshield. Let's try that. If I pop a foam windshield on this, and I've now got my lips directly on the foam, do you think that's acceptable? It's better. I don't think it's particularly nice though. That's my humble view at the moment. So this one, not so sure. Do you want to try the genuine 57 with a filter? Hold on. Okay, so we're on the genuine SM57, used in close. My lips are actually touching the foam. So this is a 57, used touching the lips almost, making the most of its proximity effect. And why don't we swap this one for an SM58? There's one sitting here, let's give it a go. So now we've got an SM58. It's been about a long time and is always the option to use in place of a 57. So we know when we use a 57. The 57 gets used on instruments mostly, other things like that. Rarely gets used on vocals, but can do the job. The 58 gets used on vocals and rarely gets used on instruments. There's no real reason for that, apart from the fact the frequency response is tailored for people to put onto their mouth and sing into. And the P's and the B's with the internal pop shield that's in here, it's only a bit of mesh and a bit of foam, but it does a pretty decent job, doesn't it? So that's a 58. For completeness, let's swap the 58 for a Beta 58. So there we go. So now we've got a Beta 58. So the old question, is a Beta 58 better than an SM58? No, it's just different. It has a different tone and it's slightly more directional, of course. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But it's a nice microphone, but I'm actually quite happy with the sound of an SM58. I certainly shan't be swapping to using 57s for my capture here in the studio. I'll carry on using the SM7B, it's fine for me. But no way in the world is that thing going to be any use to me whatsoever. It's a shame, but what did I really expect for £12? I think I probably got exactly what I deserve for spending 12 quid on a microphone, and that's not a lot really. something very interesting just happened. I don't know if I'll be able to record this. I might be able to. Phantom power. I never turn it off. All of my gear has phantom power permanently applied. I know about all the ribbon stuff. Don't please shout at me for that. But I just don't turn it off, and I've never had any problems. But I've never had this before. What I'm going to do is put this microphone, the Counterfeit 57, close to the SM7B. See if I can actually record this. Did you hear that click? That came from the microphone. When I connected the phantom power to this microphone, the actual capsule went pop. I've never heard that before. I've never come across that coming from a microphone. Let me try the Real Shure. So I'll do it into the SM7B again, put the genuine Shure up close and then connect the cable. Let's see what happens. Absolute silence. There you go, folks. Let's work this one out. The fake SM57, when you plug in the cable with phantom power connected, emits a very loud, audible click, a pop. Plug in a genuine Shure and nothing happens. In my head, that suggests one thing, and it could also explain away the weight discrepancy. These genuine mics use a transformer inside to couple the input impedance to the output impedance. It's just an ordinary, small, very common transformer. My guess is the XLR is connected direct to the capsule of the counterfeit. Maybe we can get it open and have a look. I'll try. Yeah, there's no transformer in this microphone at all. We have the dynamic capsule, 2 wires, and they go straight to the XLR connector. So there is no transformer. That's why they're lighter. Well, there we go. I suppose if your input preamp is not a finicky one that must have a particular impedance on the input, as some of them are, if yours is happy to work into almost anything, then I guess having no transformer might be okay. It's a bit weird, isn't it? So anyway, that's one thing we've discovered about these. We've got a sound difference, and the weight difference is simply because there's no transformer. Well, I guess no transformer means they're cheaper again, doesn't it? Bizarre. Anyway, that's the result of the test. Make of it what you will. Personally, it's a 12 quid microphone. It sounds like a 12 quid microphone, and there's no way I'm going to use it for anything proper. I mean, I guess you could give it to somebody to call bingo with or something like that. But other than that, it's not a microphone for me. 12 quid wasted. I mentioned my microphone that I bought in '74. My first SM57 was 20 quid and cost me a week's wages. Well, that's pretty cheap, really, for 40 years, isn't it? I don't know how long you'll be recording for, but it doesn't owe me anything. And it's solid and it's dependable. But it's really bizarre that we've found the counterfeit with no transformer. Wouldn't have noticed had it not gone click when I connected it. Oh well. Anyway, see you on the next video. Look after yourselves. Keep safe. Bye.